Ralf Schumacher, we've just come back from a short break. A lot of the drivers went to sunny climes, but I believe you stayed at home near Salzburg, where you live. Did you get affected by the flooding?
Well, I was lucky, but certainly that doesn't help the people which did. I mean, we had massive problems there. A few people were killed, really, so it's really bad, and for all the family which lost their houses.
But you're safe, you're sitting up on high ground at home?
Well, my house was pretty safe, yeah, because it's rather high in compared to Salzburg itself. But Salzburg was bad, but not as bad as it was close to Vienna.
Now, talking of things not going so well, it seems this morning the tyres to have were not the sort that you have on your Williams, not the Michelins. Do you think that's going to change this weekend?
Well, with our experience, the better the circuit got and the more rubber we have on the circuit, the better it is for us. And especially Budapest is very dirty, so it's a bit too early to write us off yet. But it seems definitely this morning that the other tyre manufacturer had the upper hand on us. But I'm pretty confident that will change throughout the weekend.
I'm sure it will. Ralf, thank you very much.
So that was Ralf Schumacher just a few moments ago, and Mark Webber on track, as we said, first one out for this second 1 hour session in the Minardi.
And at 1.8 seconds down in a 26-second sector, and that shows you where the Ferrari performance is and where Minardi and Mark Webber and Mark pushing very hard. Nevertheless, that is a massive amount of time in such a short sector span.
Oh, and off goes Ralf. In fact, we spoke to him a few moments ago, and he's taken off to the grass again. We've seen him do that a few times here today already, and just pointing out, or just demonstrating how slippery the track is, perhaps. Let's take another look at what happened to him.
Well, once again, as that unloaded front wheel locks it up, and Ralf goes off track. So this is the replay again. It's into this turn 2. This is where he was caught out in the very early part of the first session this morning. And, well, the lesson hasn't been learnt. He's made pretty much the same error at the start of the second session.
To his teammate there, Juan Pablo Montoya, who ended up 16th fastest from this morning's session. And we'll see whether he can improve on that in this second 1 hour. The split time's up on screen. You can see Michael Schumacher, the man to beat, and this not a particularly quick lap by any means. 4 seconds off the split there for Montoya. Raced here last year, of course, his first experience of the Hungarian track some 12 months ago. Finished in 8th place, having qualified in that same position on the grid. So not one of his favourite tracks, I wouldn't say. Montoya's a man who likes fast corners and brave corners. There aren't any of those types of bends here in Hungary. Finished 3rd in the Formula 3000 race that was held here back in 1998.
But of course, what will please Montoya is if there is a Michelin tyre that generates the grip, because that run of pole positions he enjoyed in the mid-European season really was something very special for Montoya. You could see as he stepped out of the car the pleasure he got from driving right on the ragged edge. And Ben, while you say this circuit isn't necessarily a white knuckle ride, there are a couple of places on the circuit where you will get that incredible buzz that a driver, and only a driver ever really can understand, when you know you've done something a bit special, and at the end of the lap it's there with a pole position.
Yes, and of course he recorded a magnificent pole position this year at Monaco as well. At the tight confines of that track where lots of downforce was required, they had a brilliant tyre from Michelin, and both Juan Pablo Montoya and David Coulthard were stunning in that qualifying session. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens to this track over the course of the weekend. Now, you mentioned earlier on today, John, that we'll expect to see quite a lot of bits of rubber offline, and we're already beginning to see that, I notice, in a couple of key areas. This tyre war has seen the lap times reduced quite considerably here at Hungary. Last year they were some 3.5 seconds faster than they had been the previous year. A lot of that is down, of course, to the fact that you've got these two tyre manufacturers each trying to gain the advantage. Yes, that's very true, and of course it's the technology that's gone into the grooved tyre. When the grooved tyres came in '98, they were like very, very unstable. The tread surface was all over the place. Well, watching Kimi Raikkonen, I mean, literally just on the edge, balancing the car on steering and throttle. But there's the technology in the tread pattern and the stability they've got into the tread surface that has contributed, but also the compounds. And of course, with competition, you go softer, softer, softer. And generally, the softer the compound you go, the more rubber you will see being sheared off. And literally, I would expect on Sunday to see a narrowing race line rather than a widening race line, as more and more rubber will roll off both the Michelin and Bridgestone tyres, and that in itself will no doubt be responsible for somebody losing it and just either losing position but possibly being taken out of the race. Yes, it's interesting to look back that it was last year, was the first year that on the grooved tyres they actually qualified faster than in the last year of slicks, and that was 1997, of course. Pole then went to Michael Schumacher at 1:14.6, but last year on the grooved tyres a 1:14.0 for Michael Schumacher. That gives you some idea of the progress that's been made.
Yes, I mean, it's the technology of this grooved tyre, plus of course the compounds and the competition. Those three things have made such a huge difference, and that's seen the escalations in speed and the dropping of lap speeds and lap times. And to think that technology that was introduced in 98 was designed to slow cars down. It took about 3 seconds or 3.5 seconds out of the pole time in 98 over 97, and now there we are back, and way below what we've seen, the best of the true slick tyre. And I would expect here, assuming that the track does pick up and the compounds from Bridgestone and Michelin, we should expect to see maybe something down in the middle or low on the 13s. And I'm being a bit conservative here this weekend, bearing in mind that weather and other factors could come into play.
Felipe Massa getting on board the Sauber. Let's take a little look. One of the Toyotas, Mika Salo, getting into trouble up at that turn 6 chicane, although it's as though he managed to sort it out quite nicely. Didn't go steaming across the gravel as we've seen a number of people do.
No, he just got the car. I mean, it was on its way to go swapping its ends, but did a good job in controlling it. And now Anthony Davidson once again, we'll have a look and see. He's on the 28th lap of his 2 1-hour sessions. Of course, these two sessions count effectively as one session, although there are times printed for both. So Davidson 25.036. He did a 21.9 this morning, so just building back up and getting the feel for what circuit changes have occurred. Remember, he stopped just towards the end of that 1 hour session, and he called it on the radio either a gearbox or a drive shaft problem, and well, it wasn't anything particularly serious, and the Minardi team able to get him back out pretty much at the start of this session.
Yeah, so Davidson continues around, that's good to see. And Giancarlo Fisichella, who currently is 6th fastest for Jordan. Both Jordans were running quite well inside the top 10 this morning. And Fisichella at one stage was fastest behind the Ferraris, got pushed back down by the Sauber of Massa and Villeneuve. Raikkonen has now moved up to 3rd fastest, that's interesting to see, on a 1:17.901.
And Rubens Barrichello comes out of turn 14, fastest of all in that second sector. And well, it's an improvement in time, but position remains the same, but takes him within 0.2 of a second of his own Ferrari teammate.
So Raikkonen quick, and we'll wait to see anybody else moving up through the order at the moment. So Massa 4th, Villeneuve 5th, Fisichella 6th, Panis 7th. And let's see what Fisichella can do on this lap.
Well, he's been frustrated because Jacques Villeneuve is on an out lap. Fisichella was coming up to complete a lap, and that's one of the frustrations of this circuit. You have to deal with traffic that's either just starting a lap or just completing a lap, and Fisichella got caught behind Villeneuve. Villeneuve not prepared to let Fisichella get ahead. He said, no, tough, that's the way it is. If you want to get past me, you've got to fight your way past, and I'm just going to control that part of track. So Fisichella backed off and then had to restart the whole process once again.
Davidson's improved slightly. He's still last at the moment, but he's improved to 1:21.4. That's 4/10 slower than Mark Webber, using the tyres provided by this man. But off the track's gone Villeneuve. Jacques Villeneuve has spun,
and one might say that is poetic justice, because he did do something which is sometimes seen as being unfair to the drivers on a flying lap. And he's maybe been, I'm sure when Fisichella came round, there was a wry smile, if not more, on his face when he saw the Canadian spinning off track and going substantially way off the racetrack, and now drives back slowly and somewhat chastened.
Yes, no damage done, although a lot of gravel.
Oh, look at that.
Amazing amount of gravel that's been scooped up into the air ducts on either side of the cockpit there where the radiators are. And that's being deposited now on track. Let's take a look at the replay.
And that spin to turn 4, that's a quick corner, it's a flick to the left. And Villeneuve, look at that. And also, well, that's actually in the BAR garage. Jacques Villeneuve, now whether that's temper or just a bit of fun for the guys, but certainly they're the ones who have to clean it up. And Jacques is not the most popular driver with the team. He's very individual, and there's David Coulthard doing very much the same, slightly different execution, but the same outcome as he goes off in turn 4. Now I wonder, is there anything problematic in turn 4 that's caused Coulthard and Jacques Villeneuve to go off. It's a quick corner, it's one of the quicker of the corners on the circuit. You're approaching at 280 kilometres, it's only about 110 miles an hour, the actual corner speed itself. But if there's anything on the track, I can't see anything, no, just David. There's dust on the exit, but he was already too far off. He had missed the apex by what, about 5-6 feet.
Yes, indeed. There's number 3 driver at McLaren Mercedes, Alexander Wirtz, keeping an eye on things as Coulthard rejoins the track and is okay. Fastest speed we've seen on the speed trap so far today, Michael Schumacher, 295 miles per hour. That's going down in towards, kilometres per hour. Yeah, 295 kilometres per hour. That's down into turn 1. That equates to just under 190 miles per hour. So that's the highest top speed that we tend to see here in Hungary.
And that's pretty quick. But bear in mind, speeds in Monte Carlo are not that much slower. But this circuit, it's 700 metres straight out of turn 14 into turn 1. And that's really with the amount of downforce the cars are carrying. It's still a pretty impressive top speed. And Rubens Barrichello now is off track. So 3 drivers of great experience off track, finding problems around the Hungaroring, and Rubens further around the track. That was round at turns between 8 and 9 that he went off. There's
it's up
to. Well, in fact, that's back at 6. It's still in 6, in fact.
Yeah, and so once again, just finding the track a little slippery in places. We've seen this over the years on numerous occasions on a Friday. Cars flying off at all angles. In fact, I think between them, Montoya and Ralf Schumacher had some 11 offs before they got into qualify. Coulthard spins again. Oh look, he's got a left rear
tire, left rear. Now that may be the consequence of going off in turn 4, that he may have picked up a puncture. And David Coulthard having a disappointing day. Now that'll not make the McLaren team very happy, because their test programme, that's one set of tyres. Well, David comes in, spins, but was that the cause or effect again? It's difficult to tell. It looked like the tyre was inflated. Yes, it is inflated, but it may have been deflating, if that's not a contradiction. And of course, it just then broke the bead away from the side of the wheel, and round he goes.
Yes, indeed. So there's Pierre Dupasquier with a wry smile on his face after seeing that. So that tyre's had its day, very much so, and Coulthard trundles back. Quite a stiff sidewall on the tyre, isn't it? Because it still manages to keep the car up.
Yeah, we saw that last year, and one of the, at that time, Benetton's had a tyre problem, and it drove back, and the entire sidewall of the tyre, there was no tread on that Benetton at that time, and the 2 sidewalls of the tyre remained in place. The bead was still attached to the side of the tyre, so it is a function of the philosophy of Michelin that they've got a very stiff sidewall, which of course Michelin pioneers of radial tyre construction, and that was with the famous Michelin X road tyre. And now Ralf Schumacher, they're going off all over the place.
Well, it seems a bit excessive, doesn't it? He's kept it running, and hopefully he can get back onto the track. Nice little spin turn there, very well executed, and rejoining the tracks up at the same area, I think, that Coulthard went off.
Well, it's a little bit further around. That's the very quick right, left, just as you make your way back to turn 13. So a quicker part of the track that Ralph went off, whereas Coulthard and others we've been seeing down at turn 6. So that was a bit of a high-speed ride for Ralph, and again, gravel everywhere. Look, now puts the brakes on, watch it shoot out of the front of the car. One of the issues of any racetrack is David Coulthard really struggles now to get back, and what's that on Jaguar? De La Rosa. So it's...
I think it's Irvine, actually. Yes, it's Eddie Irvine. It's a bit hard to pick up from there.
It is indeed, yes.
Irvine's spun it, but there's so much gravel out there now, John, from all these cars that are going off.
Well, that's the problem with this racetrack, that the gravel is close to the circuit, and when you spin, you drag it all off.
Okay, good first and second sectors.
Yeah, he had personal bests, as the radio confirmed there, on the first and second sectors, so had a good lap going. Let's see what happened to Ralph first.
Well, this is a lot quicker for Ralph, and look at that, you see the car getting almost airborne as it hits the grass verge, then into the gravel. Now Michael! My goodness, and I think he might have stalled the engine.
Well, look, they're all falling like flies here at Hungary in the second free practice session.
Well, he's got it going again, and I wonder, is this the consequence? This is in turn 13, we believe, the consequence of all the gravel that's been dropped. Eddie Irvine, of course, went off, and we would have had gravel dropping off, and Michael will not be very happy, I suspect. at the end of this meeting there'll be a few drivers trooping up to see race director Charlie Whiting to say, look, this is unsatisfactory. Here's Michael coming down in to turn 13. Nothing untoward on the racetrack that we can see. Are a bit tight in this camera angle. The back end gets away and around she goes.
He had a bit of oversteer there earlier, didn't he? We were riding on board with him when he had to correct through that corner. This time he seemed to just run out of lock a little more.
That's a bumpy corner. The exit is bumpy, and just the car ever getting into a sequence of just losing the frequency of the damping, and around she goes. David Coulthard gets back, but that's one set of tyres which are now going to be redundant, and we're not even halfway through this second session, so forcing the team to put a new set of tyres on, or the set of tyres that they ran in the first 1 hour session this morning.
A bit of inspection going on with that tyre to determine perhaps exactly what caused it to peel away from the rim. Was it the curb? They're just checking that, looking no doubt at the side wall to see how much damage was done. Michael Schumacher fastest here from Barrichello, and Raikkonen now third. Remember, Fisichella fourth, then Massa and Villeneuve. Buttons up in 7th place. Ralf Schumacher in 10th position. And well, all these fun and games going on. David Coulthard clambers out of his car. Bruce Jones has just caught up with Michelin's Pierre Dupasquier.
Pierre Dupasquier, Michelin. This morning the track was incredibly dirty and there was a big gap between yourself and Bridgestone, but now it seems to be closing. Kimi Raikkonen up to 3rd place. Are you more confident now?
Well, there is another thing besides the dirty track that plays a role. Some drivers are using 15 kilos of gas, some others 60 or 70 or 80, so it makes a big difference, maybe 2.5 or 3 seconds. We'll see later on.
Now we've just seen David Coulthard have a puncture. Is this a particular worry on this circuit?
I have no idea. We'll see, but so far no idea.
Okay, Pierre, thank you.
So Pierre Dupasquier will no doubt inspect that tyre himself, very much hands-on, although in charge of the Michelin tyre programme. Michael Schumacher back in after his little spin, but no damage done, I think, to the Ferrari. And we still have some 42 minutes to go in this free practice session. Jarno Trulli on track.
Yes, and personal best in 1st and 2nd sector. His teammate, mind you, Jenson Button, was 7th up for. He's been in 7th place for about the last 5 or so minutes. So a bit of inspiration there from Trulli to try and match that of his teammate, and certainly showing improvements. Let's see what he does. He will certainly go up from 15th. He does. He goes up to 5th place, and well, that'll bring a smile to Trulli's face.
Now let's just look back once again at Coulthard's spin here, John.
The tyre looks to me like it's reasonably well inflated. It doesn't look like it's a problem. It's when it spins, it catches the curb in such a way it just breaks the seal between the side of the tyre and the side of the rim, and of course immediately it loses all pressure, and the tyre is pushed into the centre of the rim, and David really in no position to do anything about it. Now, I said cause or effect. It could have been that tyre was down in pressure because he had been off track. We saw him off in turn 4 a lap earlier. He may have picked up a puncture, and it was just at the point of the tyre would have actually effectively would have gone down, but the curbing accelerated that process.
Anthony Davidson rejoining the track. Let's take a look at what Trulli's been up to, also running very wide.
Yeah, and doing it coming out of turn 3, not somewhere you want to run wide.
No, that's a fast flat-out kink normally, but maybe not so flat-out in current conditions. The odd bead of sweat for Juan Pablo Montoya. Still down in 16th place. Does look as though the Williams team running quite a lot of fuel on board their cars, with Ralph 11th, Montoya 16th, behind Alan McNish at the moment, who's moved up to 15th place. Sarlo is down in 17th, and here we are with Olivier Panis. He's still running quite well. He's in 9th place. He's been in the top 10 throughout the 2 sessions so far.
Yeah, and the VAR you can see as it comes round these curves round the back. Although this is in fact coming through turns 2 and 3, just how the car shatters across the irregularities of this circuit. And I think the general complaint from most drivers so far is the track is bumpier. It feels bumpier than it did in previous years. Then it gets wide. You can see the problem around turn 5. If you get wide, you get onto the dust on the outside of the corner. You just got to back out of it into 6. Gravel all over the racetrack, and a big problem for cars. So there's only 3 cars on the track. They're all waiting for somebody to go out and hoover up the gravel, and so Anthony Davidson, the man that we're keeping an eye on, has just gone back out. He's just commencing a flying lap, and at the end of that out lap he got a personal best in sector 3. So Davidson on a 21.3 looking to improve on his 33rd lap.
So that's, we'll keep an eye on Davidson. We're still watching Panis at the moment, the experienced Frenchman, just coming through that top corner. And after the fun and games that we saw up at the chicane a moment ago, Peter Windsor's caught up with David Coulthard.
Well, David, maybe some consolation to know that a lot of other people seem to go off in that little period there. Maybe Villeneuve went off and a lot of gravel or something on the track. What was it like from your point of view?
Yeah, I think possibly what's happened is someone's ran close to the right-hand side of the track going into the fast corner and just dragged some dust on, because, you know, it was my first flying lap, so I wasn't particularly trying any heroics, but when I get into the corner I just had not the same grip I had in the previous run. And then in the next lap, of course, I went and spun going into the chicane. I've hit the curb in such a way it's popped the tyre off the rim, which is a bit unusual. And then we've just, you can hear them starting my car up there. They're having to repressurise the system because it was overheating slightly coming in so slow. So we should be out for the end of the session.
That could be a big problem on race day, though, all that gravel and stuff on the offline.
Yeah, but gravel's been here for as many years as I've been coming to Budapest, so it's the same story we see in previous years. It's traditionally a bit dusty here relative to other tracks. You just need to try and make sure you don't get caught out.
How's the car feel in general?
It's quite difficult out there this morning. If you actually look at the split early on this morning, it was all Bridgestone runners and then all the Michelin runners. I think that there was a reaction to the blistering we saw in Hockenheim, so possibly come with a slightly harder compound here than what we would have maybe chosen, but obviously Michelin hold the key to that because they have they have final say. So it'll be interesting to see whether if we can actually jump forward a little bit tomorrow. But we were 2 seconds away from Ferrari, which is bigger than it normally is on a Friday.
Thanks, David. How much longer before you're back in the car?
They're just having to repressurise the water system, so I don't actually know how long that takes, but let's say 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, while David speaks to Peter Windsor, Anthony Davidson's doing a good job on track at the moment. Davidson has just gone faster than his teammate Mark Webber, and he's going faster again on this lap, and he's looking very composed, very controlled currently, using the car hard, and this is good stuff from Davidson.
But I do think this is on a fresh set of tyres. You can see there in the grooves they're still very shiny, so Anthony having a chance after having done some 32 laps goes even quicker again. And 1:20.2, and that puts him about 0.8 of a second ahead of his teammate and the highly rated Mark Webber.
As you say, we expect Webber to come back out on new tyres himself later on, but there's some smiles down there in the Minardi pit. I think the boys are enjoying themselves this weekend. It's always fun to have a new driver and a talented driver in the car, and look at that, didn't seem to be fazed by a little bit of oversteer, the back end coming round on him at the top corner, kept his foot hard in, dealt with it and carried on.
Yes, doing I think a very good job, bearing in mind that he's been thrown into the deep end. Now that new set of tyres is getting the best of the time. A slight drop off for Anthony Davidson, but nevertheless a fine 1:20.2, just less than 1/10 of a second behind Eddie Irvine in the Jaguar.
Ron Dennis keeping an eye on things as Coulthard's car is dealt with following that little spin and the tyre coming off the rim, and as he told us, the engine getting a little bit warm on that slow run back to the pits. Of course, the engine cooling dependent on a huge amount of air passing into those radiator ducts at high speed, and at slow speeds there's not much air going in, so the engine in danger of overheating. So they'll deal with that now as Raikkonen is on track.
He's not on track, he's actually quickest on track. He's almost 0.2 of a second up on Michael Schumacher's 1:16.7. And a difficult, doesn't he loses, I think, a lot of time. He lost a bunch of time coming through turn 14 because Kimi Raikkonen was clearly going to, there he lost 0.6 of a second, almost 0.7 of a second in that last corner. But an indication that Michelin, and I once again suspect that Kimi was on a fresh set of tyres because that time came pretty much out of the box and fastest of all in the second sector, but just too keen to consolidate it in the third sector and remains third quickest.
Yes, but that is a promising performance nonetheless from Raikkonen. Much closer to the Ferraris, although we'll wait to see what they can do. 25 laps have been completed by Michael Schumacher between the two sessions so far, and we've still got just under 35 minutes remaining in this session. Ron Dennis just speaking to the engineers perhaps, getting David Coulthard's car ready. Meanwhile, we move to the BAR pit, and there's a fair bit of work going on down in here as well, checking over Villeneuve's car after his earlier indiscretion.
Well, that's quite a lot of work going on there because they've got the underfloor off the car to get all that gravel out, and a lot of time lost for Villeneuve, and of course he'll have to pay for all those rubber marks. There's still the marks. The team never even got them lifted.
Well, just coming out of the pits, Nick Heidfeld in the Sauber, Alan McNish coming out as well, and Bruce Jones managed to catch up with Ron Dennis to find out a bit more about David Coulthard's tyre.
Ron Dennis, we saw David Coulthard have a moment out on the circuit. He's done some damage to the car. Was the puncture before the spin or after, according to David?
What happened was Villeneuve went off earlier on, put quite a lot of gravel on the road, on the circuit, and that saw a couple of cars spin. When David spun, he actually went sideways with one of the rear tyres into the curb and broke the bead. So it wasn't actually a puncture. Repair the car and get him out shortly.
OK, thanks, Ron.
Michael Schumacher's about to go even faster here, a 1:16.3. That's faster than last year on the Friday. So Schumacher quick once again, and after Raikkonen put in a quick lap, Michael Schumacher comes straight back out and does likewise.
Yes, and Mika Salo realising there's a Ferrari coming, so gets over to the right and out of the way. There's Weber and Sato. Sato, 5th quickest. Good job. First time here for the young Japanese driver, and he goes 5th quickest directly behind Giancarlo Fisichella, his teammate.
Yeah, so he'll be pleased with that performance, as the 2 Jordans now featuring in the top 5. We've got 2 Ferraris, a McLaren, 2 Jordans, then the Renault of Trulli, the Sauber of Massa, the BAR of Villeneuve, and the next Renault of Jenson Button.
Yeah, just giving you an indication. Whoa, we never saw that. We cut back to the action on the track, but Michael, well, I think he was distracted by Salo and maybe overran into the corner, couldn't slow it down, and couldn't turn it too quickly, otherwise that would have been a spin. Just managed to keep the car on track.
We'll risk the gearbox. It is raining, guys.
I thought it maybe was raining.
Another dry running into looking.
I thought I saw spots of rain when we had that shot of the public. I thought there was rain coming down. Olivier Panis' face, you can see, look at his face, he's disappointed by that.
Yes, that's a great shame that a little bit of rain falling. It's been a bit like that this morning, bit of rain just before the first session began.
Can we get to that Wiggins clip without taking the floor off?
There's still work going on.
Yeah, we're going to change the neck of the tyres. Can you leave that panel off for the moment on the rear?
So they can get Panis back out. Mark Webber, a slight improvement on his lap, but not as quick as Davidson. Some 0.5 of a second, half a second slower than his teammate Anthony Davidson at this point.
And those tyres look to me to be fairly fresh as well. As we see that's the oil flag, that's out to indicate that it is raining.
Yeah, so the track conditions not perhaps as good as they were just a few minutes ago. Let's watch Webber. He might have been caught out a little bit by these conditions. Let's see, the car sliding. Well, he used a bit more than the normal amount of curb through that section. And Webber will hope not to get in trouble. That's up at turn 12. We've seen quite a few people go a little wide there. Montoya heading in.
Well, there is the sign that the weather is changing and the rain is beginning to... It's not heavy, it's just spits and spots of rain, but I think that the Hungarians are well aware of what could be coming over the next 24 hours and came certainly prepared for it this afternoon.
Yeah, there's been so much rain in Central Europe over the last couple of weeks, and there you can see a fair bit of heavy-looking cloud around. Conditions are due to be better on Saturday and Sunday. Well, certainly a bit of poor weather on Saturday, but better on Sunday, as you could see from the team's own weather forecasting. Takuma Sato across the line, a 1:18.3, so it's not really slippery out there yet. They're still putting in reasonable times.
Well, that time's within about 100th of a second of his current quickest time, which sees him in 5th place. And again, Takuma Sato just swings into turn 2, just turns the wheel, back end steps out, but he keeps it on the track.
Now I gather we have the chance to speak to Toyota team boss Ove Anderson. Good afternoon, Ove.
Good afternoon.
Good to have you joining us today. We're just watching some pictures, funnily enough, right now with Alan McNish. It's a little bit of a shame about the weather conditions, though. This could affect your preparations.
Yeah, it's not too bad, I suppose, at the moment. If it doesn't get worse than this, I think it's... and anyway, it's the same for everybody.
Now, you came here last year with the test chassis, I believe. It's usually pretty hot in this part of the world. When you came here testing, what were the conditions like then?
It was quite hot at that time, but I mean, it wasn't with the same chassis at all. It was with quite a different car, so we understand a little bit the circuit, but we can't have any useful data from that time.
Now, this track is one that demands a lot of downforce. We see that you're running that extra wing on the back of the car again. Is that a feature that we're only going to see at these high downforce circuits?
Yeah, we are just trying it. That's what we used in Monaco, and we try to see whether it's also working well here.
And what are your initial feelings about the tyre performance this weekend?
Yeah, that is something we have to wait and see. I suppose the temperature will change for tomorrow and also for the race day. So it's, I suppose, quite critical what we do now.
Just one last question. Is there any more news or confirmation yet as to driver lineup for next year, or when are you likely to know the driver lineup for next year?
Well, it will still be a couple of weeks before we have finally decided what we are going to do.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us, and best of luck for both Salo and McNish this weekend.
Well, we've been watching Takuma Sato, and this is a battle. I mean, it's not a race, it's just a bit of a war going on between Mark Webber and Takuma Sato for almost a lap. Sato's been trying to find a way past Mark Webber, and in reality all he's doing is frustrating himself. He's not doing anything for the tyres or the car, and either if he hasn't got the wit to back out of it, then the team should be on the radio and say, just let Webber go. You're not going to get past him, he's not going to concede, so just back off.
Juan Pablo Montoya still down in 16th place, running plenty of fuel on board, but the Williams haven't looked particularly settled on the track in these slippery conditions. The dustiness of the track on its first day, catching out Ralf Schumacher several times. Montoya has completed some 33 laps now during the two sessions, which is as many as most. Davidson's done some 36 laps, which I think is still the top number of laps completed today. And Montoya there, you can just see correcting slightly as he comes through that long turn 5 up towards the slippery chicane again. You can just see the back end of the car weaving a bit.
Yeah, it's not a comfortable looking car. I mean, it's a high workload that Montoya's got, and he's always having to, he's almost, you can sense, afraid to turn the wheel and know that the back end's going to be with him. He's always had, it's a very, well, again, just the car a little bit more stable as the speed builds up and the downforce starts to take over. Car appears much better. It's when the speeds are lower and the car is less laden with downforce that the back end seems to be more difficult to control.
Through turn 13 and the last bend, the right-hander at the top, some coming in quite tight early on, some going in wider. You can see a variety of line being chosen by the drivers. As he comes across the line, he moves up to 12th place actually, so there is a slight improvement for him.
But so Sato's gone 4th quickest. He's got clear of Mark Webber, and now the Jordans again staying 4th and 5th, but a reversal of Fisichella down to 5th.
Might well suit him, this track. He seems to like chucking it around, great car control. Fisichella as well, always good in Monaco, where the cars are running high downforce trim, and both Jordans looking good at the moment. That was Montoya using the curb, but that's fairly standard up at that section of track, turn number 12, and there you can see the rather heavily overcast skies, but it doesn't look as though the conditions are worsening. Track temperature reasonable 26, but that's quite a lot cooler than we would normally expect at this time of year here.
Yes, it's cooler, but it was up to 29 when we were in the first part of Friday practice, so it's actually dropped slightly, so that cloud coming in has taken away some of the temperature from the racetrack. And Michael Schumacher, Rubens Barrichello, Michael in fact just gone out, Rubens sitting it out in the pits, so Michael Schumacher now starts. This will be lap 30 for the world champion. Revs up to 18,000 RPM.
Oh, and again a slide down there into turn 2.
Yeah, and the Ferrari's got a very good back end, and even that car struggles into turn 2. I've seen Michael having a problem there on a couple of laps. Watch him through turn 4.
Good quick corner now. Where does he pick the throttle up here? Well, he gets on it hard with the traction control cutting in. Now the slippery chicane. That was tidy. No instability under braking for Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari. Up through turns 8 and 9, about 90 miles an hour through here. Back on the power again.
Yeah, but he's not able to use the power. He's having to play the throttle pedal all the way through these series of corners through 7, 8, 9 and 10.
Now through 12, over that curb on the left, building up to about 150 miles an hour, then back on the brakes into the left-hander. Second gear. Now watch his line into the last bend. Comes in quite tight, reasonably, not as tight as some early on. And then just working the steering a little bit mid-corner, but not too much. Let's see the time. 73 thousandths off his own best so far.
Again, looking at that left front, the darker line on that surface indicating that there's maybe a little bit of rolling of the rubber, and maybe the Bridgestone tyre not working as fully effectively as Bridgestone would like. Nevertheless, that last sector time of Michael was the fastest of all so far we've seen in both sessions, but the first sector time, 24.9, is some 3/10 from what he achieved when he had his fastest lap.
Let's see what Jarno Trulli's doing here. He's 6th fastest at the moment. He stays 6th. He had a good first sector, but didn't back it up on the latter two parts of the lap. 18.478, about a 1/10 of a second slower than his best so far.
Well, let's look and see. Jarno Trulli. Oh, I haven't seen too many do that in the switch from right to left. There's Giancarlo Fisichella, personal best. He's been, oh, that's stuff on, that's rubbish on the track. Personal best, it gets it wrong in turn 14. It's that bump on the turn. He maybe wants to try entering the corner, a slightly softer line, try to avoid the bump. He improves to 4th quickest, and in fact, well, no, 3rd quickest would have been out of his reach, but nevertheless, he would have been closer to Raikkonen's time. There's some 3.5 of a second between Raikkonen and Fisichella. It might have been only 2/10 had he not got the car a little sideways in turn 14.
Good promising performance this from Jordan. They could certainly do with it. They've been out of the points for a number of races. Villeneuve getting back into the BAR after his off earlier on, and hopefully he'll be back on track soon.
Another interesting statistic, people come up with all these facts and figures, but Jordan's reliability, or not say reliability, their finishing record is currently the poorest of all in field in Formula One. They need to get, if they want to consolidate their situation.
Oh, we've got Ferrari, sorry to interrupt you, John, but we've got Barrichello, yeah.
So Jordan currently on 6 points, chasing down Sauber, who are chasing down Renault, and they've got BAR right behind them. So it's a very, very big battle, even at the back end of the constructors' field. So reliability is very important.
It is important, yes. They haven't had it recently, and that's the reason they haven't been scoring very well. Let's see what happened to Rubens here.
Yes, that is in turn 4. Very much a replay of what we saw with Villeneuve, and then more so with David Coulthard. As cars approach this corner, they get very close to the side of the track on the right-hand side, and that drags dust on. If you're the first car up following, and you hit the dust, well, you've just got no grip.
That's right. Well, here we are with Ralf Schumacher now, and he's in 12th place. The two Williams together in terms of times, 12th and 13th positions for them, with their heavy fuel loads, their extra wings just mounted behind the roll hoop there, behind the T-piece, which is where the camera is, of course. And they've got that extra little wing, which we have seen before this year, and the side winglets on the side pods as well, fairly prominent here in Hungary in their attempts to generate more downforce on these tight corners. He's coming around to complete the lap. This is no improvement on this lap, though, for Ralf.
They're some 4 seconds down at that split time. So again, it's just a part of the process that Williams spend every Friday, well, 2.8 seconds at the end of the day. So they spend Friday doing all the work they feel they need to do for the race. Part of the reason they do this is because on race day, frequently they're limited on the amount of running they can do on Sunday morning, as Kimi Raikkonen gets very busy out of turns 5 and 6 and gets on the grass and compromises then the rest of the lap.
Yes, so not a great effort from him. Pedro de la Rosa is on a better lap. He's 17th at the moment, goes 8th, so that's a big improvement.
It's a bunch of time.
So
and that's without it's a pleasant surprise for Jaguar, having another traumatic period in their history, and looking forward to Spa with this revised front suspension. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Nick Heidfeld loses it big time, and that's a bump and a thump into the barrier. Again, looks, it's trying to see the circuit map where that is.
Deer, and the Jags off as well.
Indeed, that's out of turn 3 as well.
De La Rosa. I don't know whether there was, I don't think there was any connection there. Heidfeld off down between turn 1 and 2, I think it is. We'll have another look at that in just a moment, but that was the first time that we've seen somebody actually hit the barrier today.
Yes, it is. So that area is up in turn 4. Heidfeld gets it wrong, catches the grass, and then she just goes into a big loop. And Nick Heidfeld not really able to do very much about it. It was going to hit the barrier one way or the other. He clipped the barrier, actually the inside left, clipped the curbing, which may have caused him to go slightly wider on the exit. And then it's wham bam, thank you Nick, into the barriers.
Really, it's just bad luck for him. De La Rosa went off at turn 3, actually, isn't it? That's coming through the kink before that.
Yes, it is. The downhill right-hander, and just about flat out. Usually, again, a short shift up a gear to make sure you can take it flat.
So drivers getting a little bit more carried away as they feel a bit more grip coming into the track, so they're prepared to take a bit more of a risk perhaps, but ultimately there still isn't the grip they're expecting. There's Heidfeld safely out of his car, but he'll be disappointed to lose the final 20 minutes of this free practice session, and down in 15th place at the moment. Of course, he had been on a good lap. That's where he'll tell the team, and it's true because his first sector time was pretty good, but unfortunately he never made it through the second sector.
And I think the cause of that was we got a glimpse of the rearward facing shot, that as Heidfeld came through turn 4, he got the left rear wheel riding the curve, and that just caused the car to launch itself a little bit further out to the right, and of course therefore compromised the exit of the corner, and then he went off and the right rear caught the grass, with Nick still pretty much, I would think, hard in it, thinking, oh, well, I got away with that, didn't I? Oops, no I didn't.
Mark Webber has just improved. You look at the classification there, that was a moment ago. Webber's actually just gone 18th fastest. He's gone ahead of Sarlo and Davidson on a 19.526, and 33 laps completed by him now. As we look into Giancarlo Fisichelle's helmet, it's still pretty warm. It might be a bit overcast, but it's still pretty hot, and you can see that evidenced by the drivers sweating inside their helmets. Felipe Massa, in the only remaining Sauber still in this session, might have expected it to be him to go off and crash. It's not usually Heidfeld who makes mistakes like that, but indeed the young Brazilian is still out there, 7th fastest.
As Eddie Irvine seeks a personal improvement, he's got it in Sector 1, he doesn't get it in Sector 2. In the meantime, Mika Salo improves up to 16th in the Toyota, so wait for Eddie Irvine, currently in 18th place. And some 0.4 of a second when he comes in, Eddie decides to say, well, maybe that mid-sector was so bad, forget about it. With some 17, just under 17.5 minutes of the session remaining. But this is where the mid-sector time went away from Eddie. Now you can see the brakes glowing, and when he reckons...
keep losing the rear. Bounces run for these tyres. I was up a hell of a lot. The big step for these tyres for sure, but I lost it in corner. The rear end get into corner.
Try and work out where he is.
Well, I can tell him which corner it was. It was round about corner 11, I think.
Yes, no names to the corners here in Hungary, so that makes it all that little bit more difficult to identify which part of the track we're talking about. It's a natural amphitheatre though. It's a great place to view Formula 1 cars, up on the banks, up on the outside here, sort of behind this camera position. You get a great view of a good part of the track, so for spectators it's a fun place to watch.
Yeah, a few bread rolls, a few bottles of red blood, some rock gut red wine from Hungary, and a bit of salami and cheese, and you can rock and roll all the way through Sunday afternoon.
But they do some good red wines, don't they, in Hungary as well?
Slowly getting there. The whites are better than the reds, I would say.
Well, I'm sure the drivers won't be imbibing too much red or white wine over the course of this weekend. Perhaps once it's all over on Sunday. Cross the line Barrichello, and not a particularly quick lap. He's on worn tyres at the moment. They may well have put a bit more fuel on board as well. Still second fastest to his teammate Michael Schumacher. Eddie Irvine back in, as we heard, lost the back end of the car. Seemed happier about the last set of tyres he was on though.
Yes, he was on a new set of tyres. He said there's obviously clearly his extra grip from that fresh set of rubber, but the balance of the car was not to his liking. The back end was a bit too lively, and that's what caused the moment, and Eddie deciding to come in and not waste those new tyres, make an adjustment to the car, and then go back out and hope that there's still a bit of freshness in that new set of rubber he is on. Pedro de la Rosa still in 8th place, doing a good job.
Low speed and high speed. The front just feel like not working at all. I had a second lap, I had a moment. I went off but came back. Turn 3.
That was actually De La Rosa we were listening to there, reporting back to the Jaguar team as we're looking inside the Jordan pit, and Fisichella also involved in discussions, lots of talk from the drivers about what's happening. And of course, as so often happens here, John, with the slippery track on Friday, it'll all change tomorrow anyway, because the track is gradually getting more grippy. I think last year there was a 2-second gain between the Friday session and the Saturday morning session. It's a massive difference, as long as it doesn't rain hard overnight.
Well, I think that's always the concern, that there will be some of this deluge that's been hitting Central Europe, and that does, and of course it washes the track clean, and the whole process will have to recommence once you get a dry track. But again, round turn 11 and some of those mid section corners, you can see such a build-up of rubber. Not so much here in 13, but you'll probably see a little bit on the exit on the outside of turn 14. You can't see quite as much there as we've seen in other corners, but it will happen, and it's just another issue that drivers are going to have to keep an eye on.
Across the line for Ralf Schumacher then, he stays down in 13th, teammate Montoya is still 14th. Barrichello's on a good lap, although probably not enough to beat teammate Michael Schumacher. Gerhard Berger keeping an eye on things from the BMW point of view, seeing their two guys quite a long way down the list, as I say, down in 13th and 14th, but they won't be too concerned about that in the early days, as we know Williams never showing their hand on the Friday.
Well, Rubens Barrichello, and he's just over half a second slower than Michael Schumacher, but he did have a personal best in the first sector, drifted away somewhere between sectors 2. We're coming into this final sector. Watch the Ferrari. Well, you don't even know where of the bump into turn 14. The Ferrari chassis really working so well around the bumpy circuit. Ends up 0.7 of a second slower, and well, about 1.5 tenths off his previous best.
Well, they had a 1-2 finish here last year, Ferrari. At the moment, it's looking good that they might be able to repeat that, but we'll have to wait and see, because there's a long way to go through this weekend, and Williams here will be working to their utmost to prevent that happening. And there you can just see the little bit of stuff that gets kicked up by the car, as and a big splat on the camera lens there for Montoya. Well, we can soon get rid of that.
I don't know whether the replay was for the splat or for Montoya.
Well, Takuma Sato, as we've seen, has been doing well all day, and he's faster again on this first split, so he looks to improve again. He's 6th at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, he's an amazing guy. He just gets in there. He's so courageous. I mean, the way he's using the car, he's really leaning on the car. The rear end of the car, you can see where he's digging in and biting, and he just gets in there, turns the wheel, and if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, well, he has to then sort of gather himself up and have another go.
Quite a nice battle going on between Sato and Massa to be fastest rookie on the track, and Sato's gone 4th overall again with a 1:17.598, puts him a 10th faster than his teammate.
Yeah, into turn 1 he went in a little bit early. I think he'd just backed out of it, in fact, and the back end came around, but that was a strong lap from Takuma Sato, really committed, coming through those last 3-4 turns at the back, 11 and 12 all the way down into 13. Let's watch again, just see the way the leanings on the, well, as you got a bit of understeer going through there. In fact, that's why he ran a little bit further out to the left than he would maybe have wanted.
Oh, and Panis in trouble again, as he always... No, he might just be moving out of the way, actually, because he's on the latter part of the lap. And he may just be moving out of the way to let other cars come through. And...
I think he went off on 2, actually.
Dear. Yeah. Again. Dear. Yes, it looks as though...
Can you try OVR1, please? OVR1.
Being asked to experiment with different settings in the car. Let's take a look. Yeah, turn 2 it was.
Yes, indeed. That's the corner that's been so... It looks nothing, and if you come in and you're just slightly too far to the right, and then you turn the wheel, the front bites, the back doesn't, and you get a big moment.
So Jarno Trulli, the two Renaults aren't featuring that strongly at the moment. Trulli down in 9th place, Jenson Button is 11th. And they had a bit of a disappointing time in Germany. They underperformed, as they would tend to say in sort of diplomatic speak, but it wasn't what they expected at all in Germany. I wonder if they're going to get it together this weekend.
Well, I think the character of the circuit and the character of their car, but also the engine, the Renault V10, that's that very wide angle. It's a very, very torquey engine. It's not the highest revving engine in Formula 1, but I think that engine will suit the characteristics of this circuit, where you're looking for mid-range pooling power rather than out-and-out top-end horsepower.
And in fact, I think they've got some engine revisions this weekend for qualifying, so we'll have to see whether that assists them as they try and move up the order. Trulli himself qualified in 8th place on the grid in Germany. He's been on that 4th row a number of times this year, but hasn't really converted it into many decent race results, except of course for Monaco, where he did finish in 4th place there.
Well, David not worrying about this particular lap. In the meantime, Anthony Davidson once again back in 20th place, but improving in those first and second sectors, and in fact he goes up to 19th and displaces his teammate Mark Webber, who's just gone into the pits.
So yes, it's quite close between those two Minardi drivers this time. Coulthard heads down towards turn 1, and currently he's 6th fastest. Just ride with him.
See, the Coulthard's line is a slightly softer line. He's coming in early, hugging the curb all the way around. He's not making it such an acute entry.
And fellow Brit, Jenson Button, is on what could be a slightly better lap. Well, his sector times don't indicate that too much, and certainly getting a bit out of shape at that top corner, so I don't think it will make much difference. He's 8th fastest and 18.250, slight improvement in time.
Yes, a personal best for Button, and maybe it would have been a slightly better position. Felipe Massa's about 0.2 of a second, and Jensen had a little bit of a moment turning into turn 14. Again, the back end getting caught by that bump on the entry to the corner. There's some of the violence of being a Grand Prix driver. Just look at the movement in the steering wheel and his head that was being just pushed around.
Yes, that's right. It is a little bumpy in places, as we've already mentioned. Top 6 at the moment: Schumacher, Barrichello, Raikkonen, Sato, Fisichella and Coulthard. So Raikkonen fastest of the Michelin runners, both McLarens in the top 6, but interestingly both Jordans in that top 6 as well. Qualified a best 4th here in the past, Jordan. Let's see what Coulthard's up to. Just finding his way past Villeneuve, is he? Oh dear, that was a bit unnecessary.
Well, I mean, what can you expect from Villeneuve sometimes? I mean, I don't know what's in this guy's brains. I mean, he had all the pit straights to see Coulthard coming through there. Now, they are mates off the racetrack, but, you know, it's sometimes, you know, what can you say?
It seemed a little strange, I have to say. Looked like they were in the middle of the Grand Prix here, rather than just doing a bit of free practice. Coulthard going for the Mika Hakkinen line down the inside into turn 1, and Villeneuve locking up in his brakes in his attempts to keep him behind, apparently, but they sorted it out and both survive as Michael Schumacher brings the Ferrari back in. Or so he's about to come out, I think. Yeah, he's doing a launch control.
Launch control start, and that rubber has done quite. Look at the camber, the right front camber on Michael Schumacher's Ferrari. That's to help, again, the turn-in bite that is so vital to get the car into a corner. And Ferrari running a substantial amount of front camber.
So the comparison in times, there you can see, between Davidson and Webber. Davidson a fraction faster than his more experienced teammate for the moment, and I'm sure Minardi will be looking forward to a bit of inter-team rivalry between the two drivers. It's something they haven't been able to enjoy this year because Webber's been so dominant over Alex Young. We'll have to see what happens. I think qualifying will be tough for Davidson. It is such a different environment, those 4 sets of tyres to be used, only 12 laps maximum, and the pressure really on. And we'll see how he performs in very demanding conditions tomorrow. De La Rosa across the line, 7th fastest for the Jaguar driver, and he's doing well today, I have to say. Doing a much more effective job at the moment than Eddie Irvine, although Irvine has recently improved and gone up to 12th place.
So both Jaguars, they were hoping that the tyre would maybe mask some of the problems the car has, the new suspension that is coming, which they will have for the Belgian Grand Prix. As Anthony Davidson, the first time we've really seen him getting into trouble, we did see him off at the end of the first session, but they're in turn 6, like many others before him, and I'm sure many will come after him, being caught out by the braking into turn 6, that very slow and easily misjudged right-left chicane.
Well, what a fantastic opportunity this is for the young Englishman. Let's see what happened. Turning in, decided to straight line it, basically.
Yes, he thought if he kept the wheel turned to the right, that the prospects of a spin would be on the card, so he decided to go across the gravel. He had enough momentum to get through the gravel and get out the other side. But doing a strong job, doing a very good job, and I'm sure Paul Stoddard will be delighted. I'm sure Dave Richards is as well.
Yes, indeed. He's contracted to David Richards as test driver, but is competing in the next 2 Grand Prix for Paul Stoddard's Minardi team.
Well, Michael's just cruising around his first sector time, 4 seconds off his current fastest sector time, so going on toward just looking around, I suspect just observing the racetrack to see where the gravel is lying, to see if there have been any substantial or notable changes to the line. And just well, going about his work.
Yes, indeed. Let's just take another look here at what he was up to.
Again, that's the change. You think that's the brake balance adjustment, which is just done behind the steering wheel. And next other changes on the steering wheel as well.
So many buttons now, aren't there, and adjustments that the drivers can make as they head round. Sometimes it's the drivers that make the adjustments, sometimes they're asked to, of course, by the team on the pit wall there. But so much to concentrate on and think about, not just the driving of the car.
But only a few drivers have got the capacity, the spare mental capacity to do what Michael Schumacher does, and he's constantly adjusting that car. trying to optimise it for every corner as we go with teammate Rubens Barrichello, who's got a personal best in first sector, and we're shortly going to see what he's done in second sector. 55.2 is the best of all Michael Schumacher. No, it's not. It's half a second down, and Schumacher it doesn't even match Rubens' own personal best.
No, so this isn't going to be an improvement for the Brazilian, but nonetheless still involved in a close battle, remember, for second place in the World Drivers' Championship. That battle is set to continue for quite a way yet, I would imagine. Second at the moment is Montoya on 40 points, Ralf Schumacher on 36 points, Rubens Barrichello on 35, and David Coulthard on 32. So it's still just those 8 points separating all those drivers in the battle for second in the championship.
So Michael Schumacher comes through, turns 11 and 12, down into 13. And yet again, nothing particularly stunning or startling. This is an original set of tyres. We don't know how many laps this particular set will have done, but clearly again, look at the back of the car, just catching the dirtier part of the exit of the corner in the back, wanting to come around. Well, he's just over half a second away from his best at 16.969. And there are only 2 cars on the track have broken the 117s, of which the Ferrari are the 2.
Yes, so it looks like he's, as you say, backed off, slowed it all down a bit. Must be fairly happy with the way things are going so far. Let's take a look back at what Massa has been up to here. Got very close behind the car in front, maybe lost a bit of downforce, although, that was all getting a bit close.
Well, it was indeed, and there's a bit of, well, you can see the residue of gravel on track, and Massa had to get out of the throttle very rapidly indeed and make pretty rapid avoiding action, but he's back up to speed, and as entertaining as ever. Currently 8th personal best in first and second sector. Could see an improvement in position because De La Rosa is only literally thousandths of seconds ahead of him in 7th place, and David Coulthard about 0.3 of a second ahead of him in 6th place.
So Massa comes through, let's see, yep, 7th place for him, 17.704. That is his best time to date, just behind Coulthard still.
It actually equals Coulthard's time, but Coulthard did it first, so he retains 6th place.
And on board now with Fisichella. Now Fisichella, remember, has been running well throughout the sessions. He's 5th at the moment, just behind teammate Sato. And Jordan looks as though it's giving him good confidence. 7/10 down on the overall, but this could still improve his position.
Well, he's got personal bests, and Sato, I suspect, might find himself having enjoyed 4th place. Well, just again that turn, and that oversteer on the initial turn, he's got to correct it, but he gets it into the corner, gets good drive off the corner. It's going to be very close. He has done it, 4th place.
Yep, so he goes ahead of his teammate once again. These two have been swapping positions really throughout the 2 sessions. Fisichella now 4th, Sato back to 5th, Coulthard 6th ahead of Massa, and then De La Rosa 8th, Button 9th, Trulli 10th, then it's Villeneuve, Irvine, Panis, Solo, Ralf Schumacher and Juan Pablo Montoya 15th and 16th, Heidfeld 17th, then McNish, Davidson and Webber.
Takuma Sato, well and truly off the track, and he does it at turn 4. Eddie has a look at the screen and thinks, well, has that cost me another £10,000? In reality it's 2, but he,
off the track goes Montoya, and right at the end of the session, just a minute to go.
Lucky that happened. I could have talked myself into a bit of trouble there.
Well, Montoya, I'm not sure he's going to recover from that. He's quite well bedded in, but as I say, it's only, you can see the clock counting down to the end of the session. We're almost at the end of free practice here. He had just put in a faster first sector, I should say, and that's how he looped it around.
And around she went, and that was into turn 9.
Yeah, we haven't seen many people fall off at turn 9, have we?
It's not a part of the track you want to. Normally what happens is you spin, you don't go into the gravel as he done, you go actually completely round, and you go into the barrier on the right hand side of the track. There's somebody, and that's turn 4, and it is Felipe Massa, the second of the Saubers, exactly the same part of the racetrack that Heidfeld went off some 15 minutes earlier, and this time Massa's done an even more comprehensive job.
Michael Schumacher watching the monitors, and Sauber are going to have plenty of work to do tonight. The mechanics are going, oh no, not another one. Both sets of mechanics will be putting in some late hours.
And that little incident may be just what it's taking for Peter Sauber to think about Heinz-Hauer Frentzen and the Belgian Grand Prix.
So Ralf Schumacher finishes off his session. Felipe Massa not covering himself in glory right at the end there. So a little bit disappointing. Let's see what happened on the replay. Out of the corner, it's right, just like Heidfeld puts the wheel over the curb and slams into the barrier.
And he hit it much more acutely. That was a bigger impact. And there it is. Well, what I want to see is the bit before, because I think what Heidfeld did was catch the curb on the inside of turn 3 or turn 4, and that threw him out wide to the right. And then, well, we saw Felipe Massa. It may have just been simply down to him just being too keen to maintain the exit speed. And Peter Sauber's face, I think, well, there it says pretty much it all to me. I think his patience has run out, and well, will he be rested for Belgium, or will he redeem himself over the next 2 days?
Yeah, he did not need that, with talk of replacement already. Perhaps Frentzen coming into that team to boost Sauber's chances of taking 4th in the Constructors' Championship. And although he can argue perhaps that Nick Heidfeld also did it, well, Nick hasn't made many mistakes this year, so to a certain extent he can get away with it. And Peter Sauber is not the man to take that easily at all, as you can see from his reaction. Meanwhile, Michael Schumacher's had a good day once again. He's fastest, 16.346.
That's a fairly animated conversation between Bridgestone and Michael. Michael saying, no, it's my way. No, not your way. No, it's my way. And look at his eyes, he's quite wired.
Yeah, he does look quite fired up, I have to say. But he ends the day fastest by 0.6 of a second over teammate Rubens Barrichello. And Ralf Schumacher moving up to 3rd, right at the end of that session. So Ralf Schumacher putting in a quick lap. Meanwhile, Peter Windsor's managed to catch up with Ross Brawn.
Ross just radioing the message there. Ross, great looking 2 sessions for you there. Ralf Schumacher and Kimi Räikkönen looking pretty good, but looked like a great day for you.
Yes, it's a little bit messy. You saw a lot of people going off, so we did some changes which I'm not sure about, and we tried to compare the 2 tyres. I'm not sure about those either, because it got pretty messy at different times. The drivers were asking if there was oil down on the track or if someone had gone off, and they weren't sure if it was the tyre, they weren't sure if it was the track, so it was a tricky set.
There's an amazing number of people have gone off, as you say. Is it now it's the end of the session? Can we assume it's just gravel and dust off line caused by other people going off?
I suspect that's it mostly. I didn't see any engine blow-ups. I think it's mostly people bringing rubbish on the track, but you've only got to go a little bit offline here, and it's difficult. So, you know, half a metre offline and you've got a different car.
How's this 3-week break been for Ferrari? Have your boys had a reasonable amount of time off?
Yeah, we managed to get everyone away for a week. I think it's very useful. I think it's a shame we haven't got it next year, because it's nice just to give everyone a bit of a break in a hard season. But